enthusiast, and this syndrome itself causes sleep deprivation, sleep deficiency, and insomnia. So this is the area of interest for me. So I'll try to give you a gist. During the presentation, if you find out any queries, anything which is going too fast, you can gently ping me. I'll try to slow down it. And if you have any queries, I'll try to sort it out at my level best at the end of the session. So again, welcome you all. Very warm good morning, and thanking you again, the Department of Physiotherapy, Vivekanand Global University, and its great initiative to work to have free webinars, especially on the theme physiotherapy and diabetes, because we can do the great things. So let us start. There is no need of the introduction, already done. So in this section, we will cover the background of information about RLS and the objective, because there are two things I tried at my level on today's presentation. One is to give some information, to reliable information about RLS. Another, if the students are present, to have an overview how case report, how presentation regarding research paper has to be presented, some outlines of the research paper presentation, and how to refer the articles or the contents. So please mind the things. Now, why we have chosen this topic, RLS, restless leg syndrome. So first of all, restless leg syndrome, as the name suggests, means the patient, the sufferer, would be having difficulty or would be having restlessness in the legs. So in the legs does not mean it would be in the legs only. In the legs, it means predominantly can be lower extremity, but yeah, upper extremity can be affected. As this disorder was being first described in 1680 by Dr. Willis, though it is also known as Willis-Ackbone disease, because this was being first published in the Ackbone in 1945. Now, so what happens in RLS? So before proceeding with the text and all, so let me summarize the things in a short way. Whenever someone complains of having any uneasiness, any burning, any tingling, any paresthesia, and that predominates, it occurs especially on the rest time or in the night time, is always regarded as restless leg syndrome. There is another variant which is very similar to this, is PLMD, periodic limb movement disorder, and there is one disparity between RLS and PLMD, is that in the RLS patient predominantly have uneasiness. In PLMD patient predominantly have a feeling of moving the limbs with a less uneasiness actually. Most of the time patient has the complaint of uneasiness, paresthesia and all. And whenever the patient moves the limbs, whenever the patient massages the limb, whenever the patient stretches the limb, there is a, I guess I disconnected. Sorry for disconnection. I am back now. So whenever the patient moves the limb, massages the limb, stretches the limb, it eases the symptom, and then patient falls asleep. So as the disorder is occurring, especially during the rest time or whenever patient is going to sleep, means it will affect the patient's sleeping habits. And if patient will not sleep well, definitely it will affect the patient's mental health as well as the physical health in future. So it is actually a sensory motor disorder. The patient is having sensory motor problems and leading to the insomnia or other sleeping disturbance in future. And it is a progressive and chronic disorder, usually remains undiagnosed and mostly untreated. And it's characterized as an uncontrollable urge to move the limbs, and patient feel very uncomfortable. There are a lot of painful and burning and uneasy sensation is there in the limbs. And there may be the diurnal variation. Patient may have disparities in the symptoms, maybe in the morning and evening time. If we talk about pathophysiology, complete pathophysiology is still unknown, but yeah, there are a few hypotheses which suggest and which tells us about the basic etiology of the disease. most of the time it is believed that it has a great association between different variants of genetic mutations and combined with the dopaminergic and brain iron dysregulation, and it plays a important role. So if I'll summarize, there are two major factors. Now, one which is very common, which causes the RLS, either can be the vitamin B12 deficiency or iron deficiency, especially in the brain, which is causing neuronal dysregulation and leading to the dopaminergic dysregulation and sleeping difficulties in the patient, and patient feels anxiety. Another cause can be the psychological cause, or we can see, yeah, another cause can be psychological cause or the cause which is related to the dopamine. So whenever you are having deficiency of dopamine, which you are having a lot of cortisol secretion, a lot of stress in your body, and it leads to the development of this type of disorder. So if the patient is having any underlying etiology, there are a number of factors, and thereby we say this is a multifactorial disorder, multifactorial syndrome. So if patient is having any underlying disorder, then definitely we can treat the underlying disorder, or the physician can treat the underlying disorder, and then it resolves. It can happen because of sometimes some medications like antipsychotic medications, the medications for the depression, they can provoke the symptoms, but symptoms resolve immediately after stopping the medication. But if it is a true RLS, if it is an idiopathic RLS, there would be no association between the iron deficiency as well as with any medication. If you see the prevalence rate, overall prevalence is around 1 to 5%. Obviously, the prevalence increases by the age. I guess I am comfortable, the audience are comfortable with the English, or I should go with the mixed language? Okay, let us go ahead with the English only. So overall prevalence is 1 to 5% and increases with the age. So as the age advances, most of the people before the age of 10 years or up to the age of 10 years found to be prevalent of 10%, and if the age is before 20 years, the prevalence rate increases to 38 to 45%. This is found to be higher in the Western countries, comparatively lower in Asian countries. In India, we have a 2.9% of the prevalence of RLS. The women are affected similar until unless they are nulliparous or unmarried women or women without having any iron deficiency. Women with a pregnancy or multiparous woman had 2 to 3 higher rate of prevalence of developing this disorder. And as a pregnancy is a provocating factor, it causes a lot of hormonal and physiological changes during pregnancy, and it leads to the development of the RLS, but it usually resolves after the pregnancy is over, and it is on the peak on the 3rd trimester of pregnancy. And there are a lot of articles available which has shown the reasoning behind the development of RLS during pregnancy and the factors or the treatment strategies as well. So moving ahead, there are a few risk factors. I would like to list out the first and foremost is the pregnancy. It is a natural risk factor which provokes the symptom of RLS, and there can be another multiple factors like you can have iron deficiency, kidney disease, lung disease, CVA, myelitis, ALS, spinal cord injury, any sort of chronic neurological condition, migraine. If you are having sleeping difficulties, you can develop RLS. If you are having RLS, it will create you insomnia in later life. And there are a few medicines like if you are having taking hypothyroidism and you are having hypothyroidism, hypoglycemic, taking TCAs, antidepressant, and taking SSRIs, so that can provoke or that can cause RLS type symptoms. but the symptoms disappears after the stopping the medication, anti-epileptics and beta blockers. So these are multiple factors which causes the development of RLS in individuals. Broadly, we can divide or categorize the restless leg syndrome in two categories. One is idiopathic. Obviously, idiopathic means there should be no underlying cause. And another one is always a secondary. Secondary means patient is always having a primary root cause, something else than RL. Means patient might be having iron deficiency anemia, and because of this iron deficiency anemia, because it was chronic and might be untreated or may not be connected even when tried to treat, and can cause the development of RLS in later life. So it can create RLS. So 40 to 90% of the individuals with RLS having the genetic history, genetic predisposition. So we can see, yeah, there can be a genetic predisposition, a strong correlation between genetic predisposition of RLS. Why I have chosen the topic to because the theme of the type 2 diabetes. If you see the last line of this objective, this is the main reason why the topic was being chosen for today's webinar. The prevalence rate for restless leg syndrome in the diabetic versus non-diabetic population. Prevalence rate for restless leg syndrome in the diabetic versus non-diabetic population is 28.6%, rather it is only 7.1% in the non-diabetic population. Means if the person is having type 2 diabetes and if the person is having any sort of hyperglycemia, then it can create RLS. There can be multiple reasons. The patient may develop the RLS because of the diabetes itself, may develop the RLS because of the peripheral neuropathy or other neurological complications or neuropathic complications because of diabetes. So it is almost 4 times increase in the incidence in the patient with diabetes mellitus. So this was the reason. And we as a physical therapist, whenever we ask the patient to do physical activity or we undertake the patient for physiotherapy, it improves the glucose tolerance of an individual, or we can see insulin response of the individuals improves. So there are only 2 ways how we can improve the insulin resistance for an individual. One is the physical activity, another one to improve the sleep health of the individual. And we as a physical therapist can work on both. So this was the main motive to select the topic for the webinar. So let us see what are the other objectives of this webinar or other objectives to understand or study the topic RLS. Person with diabetes reports higher rates of insomnia. So if someone is having more chances of developing insomnia, then the patient definitely has a bidirectional relationship. Patient will have physical issues or psychiatric issues later in the life. Patient will have poor sleep quality. Patient will have excessive daytime sleepiness, and that means patient will not be able to perform better during physical therapy session as well and in the ideal activities. So being a physical therapist, we need more attention of the patient. We are usually working with the motor learning and motor control practices. There we need more concentration, more attention. So patient, if not sleeping well, will not be able to participate or work well with you. So this is how the RLS can affect. And higher use of sleeping medications. Because if the patient will have sleeping deficiency, will have a tendency to use medicines for it. And again, these sleeping medication or sleeping pills will either have addiction, and there are researches which shows after the use of sleeping medicine for 50 years, it can land up an individual into the stupor. Although it can also, interestingly, decrease your capability to learn the new things. Means your motor learning is inversely affected or drastically reduced by the use of such CNS depressant or such sleeping medication which enhance your sleep. Another objective is multiple factors which causes the insomnia in, it is not person with disability, it is like person with diabetes. So there are multiple factors which causes insomnia in person with diabetes because insomnia is because of the RS. So these three are directly related to each other. The with diabetes has discomfort or pain associated with peripheral neuropathy. Patient develops RLS because of the diabetes or maybe due to the complication of diabetes. Patient may develop PLMD, periodic limb movement disorder. Patient usually have overnight hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia that leads to the sleeping disturbance. If the patient is having sleeping disturbance, that can develop dysomnia or insomnia later on. The patient has nocturia and depression as well. So these are the objectives. Now, how an individual or how a clinician can diagnose the restless leg syndrome in a sufferer. So interestingly, specifically to diagnose the RLS, there is a questionnaire or there is a criteria which has been devised by International Restless Leg Syndrome Study Group. So it is referred as, it was been revised in 2012 as well. So it is referred as IRLS Study Group Diagnostic Criteria. And there are a few essential things which has to be present in an individual. If the individual meet all these criteria, then the patient can be referred as a sufferer of RLS, irrespective of the cause. Cause can be anything else. The cause we need to find out in the history of an individual. Now, essential diagnostic criteria includes an urge to move the legs, usually, but not always, accompanied by feeling of uncomfortable or unpleasant sensation. So patient usually have urge to move the limbs. That is the predominant. Sometimes patient may have urge because of uneasiness. Sometimes patient may say, no, I don't have uneasiness. I just move the limbs and I just have a desire to move the limb and then I fall asleep. It makes me feel better and it helps me sleep easier or earlier. Another complaint patient says during the history, urge to move the legs and any accompanying unpleasant sensation begin or worsen during the periods of rest or inactivity like lying down or sitting. So whenever patient have urge to move, so the symptoms of uneasiness, sometimes the symptoms may persist in the daytime, but they are very less. But they have to be increased during the resting or during the sleeping time. So whenever patient will have nocturnal or rest time aggravation of symptom, uneasiness of the legs, then it can be the sign of RLS. Urge to move the legs and any accompanying unpleasant sensation which are partially or totally relieved by movement. Either it may be relieved by movement, may not be relieved by movement, like walking, stretching, massaging, and at least as long as the activity is continuing. So until and unless you are moving, you are massaging. So there are a lot of patients which tells you during this. I usually ask my wife, I usually ask my mother to massage my legs, to stretch, or I usually walk around the bed or in the bedroom to have a better sleep. And then after walking, I had a sleep. And sometimes it may happen because if it is severe enough, so patient will have a recurrent disruption of sleep. Patient again disrupt the sleep and wake up and again walks in the bedroom. Another symptom can be urge to move the legs in accompanying unpleasant sensation, and it works in the evening at night rather than during the daytime. And the last is the occurrence of above features are not solely accounted for as symptoms primary to the another medical condition. So there should not be another medical condition, another behavioral condition which is causing this. So there should not be relationship. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Thank you, thank you. Is my screen is also visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Sorry, I guess my video disconnected. Okay. So while meeting all the above four criteria, patient should not have any underlying cause other than RLS. Means patient should not have any underlying psychiatric illness, any underlying medical condition, any underlying behavioral issues, and any medication which is currently being taken which can cause RLS. So if there is nothing, then definitely the patient is a case of restless leg syndrome. There are few specifiers, or we can say there are few terminologies which we use for the clinical determination or clinical identification of the RLS. It can be of two types. As we have seen that because of as per the etiology, it can be either etiopathic or it can be a secondary. Similarly, here according to the onset, we can divide into two more categories. It can be a chronic persistent RLS and it can be an intermittent RLS. In the chronic persistent RLS, the patient usually have symptoms of RLS since last 1 year and which reoccurs at least 2 times weekly. So if since 1 year, patient is having continuously the symptoms of restlessness or uneasiness twice weekly, can be regarded as chronic persistent RLS, which is persistent since 1 year. And if it is coming on and off and going and coming, so this can be intermittent RLS. But there are one specific thing like the patient should have the recurrence or the onset of symptoms more than 2 times weekly, as well as patient should have at least 5 time events, 5 lifetime events, 5 lifetime previous event of the RLS. Now, there are a few specific things which we should consider while using the diagnostic criteria of RLS study group. So I guess it is visible now. Sometimes the urge to move the leg is present without uncomfortable sensation. And sometimes the arms or other parts of the body are involved in the addition to the leg. So this is not truly only in the lower limbs. It can affect upper limb and even in the other parts of the body, but it starts with the lower limb. So the patient may have complaint lower limb as well as in the upper limb and other body parts. Can be considered as RLS. For the children, the description of these symptoms should be in the child's own words. The child can have a different presentation of these symptoms. When symptoms are very severe and relieved by the activity may not be noticeable but must have been previously present. When the symptoms are very severe, the worsening in the evening or night may not be noticeable but must have been previously present. Whenever the symptoms are very, very severe enough, and worsening on the night time, which is the classical presentation of the RLS, but right now, or because maybe it is a chronic RLS, so nowadays patient may not have so severe because when the pain becomes chronic, it becomes dull pain. So may not be so uneasy, but it was uneasy when it was active. That can be considered as RLS. These conditions often referred as RLS mimics. So there are few conditions which mimics the RLS. So we will have an overview how we can differentiate them. We'll see them in the next slide. The clinical course criteria do not apply for the pediatric cases, nor for the some special cases of provoked RLS, which happens due to the pregnancy or drug-induced RLS, where frequency may be high, especially in the pregnancy. The frequency can be more than 3 times weekly, especially in the third trimester of pregnancy. Because in the third trimester, not only the iron deficiency is a cause, rather than the iron deficiency, the increased size of uterus leading to the increased demand on the cardiovascular system and causes development of uneasiness in the legs. So the frequency increases. So this criteria doesn't apply to these conditions directly. Now there are few mimics which looks like they are RLS. The one is nocturnal leg cramps that obviously, as the name suggests, happens in the night time. So you can see these are the leg cramps. Here patient predominantly having involuntary muscle contraction in the leg muscles. This disorder is also known as Charlie-Hall's disorder, Charlie-Hall's disease. There is a muscle spasm or muscle cramp which usually affect one area of the leg. So any specific area of leg is being affected every day. There are a lot of people who complain, I do usually have the cramps in my legs whenever I sleep on the night. There are many people who usually say I have cramps, especially on the nights on the cold weather. So, and sometimes whenever I have a long walking, I have a more exertional day, I do have cramps in the night. Is this RLS? So no, this can be nocturnal leg cramps. So we need to check it out whether the muscle group is affected. Either it is overused in the daytime. So if it is overused and the muscle was fatigued during the daytime, it can develop the RLS type symptoms. So this is not a RLS. But because in the RLS, entire extremity is being affected, not a specific muscle group area. If the specific muscle group is affected, and then you need to find it out, there can be a specific history available for it. Another thing, another disease can be akathisia. This is a side effect of a specific some psychiatric medications. The patient may have restlessness, may be more noticeable, especially on the night time, and it can happen even in the daytime also. So, but the patient will have a history of taking psychiatric medicine. So if the patient is taking this, then definitely we already described in the RLS diagnostic criteria, it will not be a suitable case for RLS. So it can be the case of akathisia. There can be a lot of neurological complications because there are many multiple variable risk factors which causes RLS. So these neurological conditions directly cannot be regarded as RLS, but it can develop later on the RLS. So these neurological conditions are peripheral neuropathy, which leads to the numbness, tingling, and uneasiness. But what is the difference between the neurological complication causing no relief in symptoms because of the movement? So whenever the patient moves, massage, stretches, there is no such relief in the symptoms in neurological complication. If the patient is having peripheral neuropathy because of diabetes, patient may not relieve the symptoms. So you need to see the other underlying causes. So this we can see the can be the underlying cause, and there can be a deficiency of vitamins like vitamin B12, most commonly considered, and iron deficiency. Now there are two specific outcome measures which we commonly use are RLS QOL and another is RLS RS. So RLS QOL is a restless leg syndrome quality of life. Again, because this is a disorder which is commonly diagnosed because of the via the use of questionnaires, self-rating questionnaires. So this is a self-report questionnaire. It takes around 5 to 10 minutes to complete. The reliability of the inter-rater reliability is 0.79 to 0.84. And it is an 18-item scale and initially designed to assess the quality of life in the patient which are affected with the RLS. This scale queries the impact of RLS on the patient's activity of daily living, the patient's morning and evening activities, patient's concentration, patient's sexual activity, and the work performance. So all the area, all the domains of the patient are considered during this questionnaire. So this is the most reliable tool, cover all the aspects of the life. When it comes to the scoring, it is actually a very sophisticated way to score the questionnaire. There are basically 18 questions, so 1 to 5, 7 to 10, and 13 uses a specific rating scale 0 to 5, So means if there is a lower score, which indicates there is a greater frequency and there is a more severity of RLS. In question number 6, 16 to 18, they are continuous variable and they range from 0 to 28, because in these questions, patient is usually asked to rate or to demonstrate how many days in a week or since how many weeks patient is having the symptoms. So these are the continuous variables. If suppose because it notice the changes of last 4 weeks. So you are observing for 1 month, previous 1 month. So patient tells the details that how many times a week or how many weeks patient is having the difficulties. Question number 11, 12, 14, 15, they are categorical variables, and in the patient, in these patient needs to respond in the form of yes and no. So if the patient answers the yes, it can be categorized A1, or no, it is A2, and if there is any other reason, because these are specifically asking about the difficulty in sleeping. So if there is any other reason because of not having RLS or anything else, so that this is the answer of, to be graded as A3. So I have given a link here. Let me check if it is working. Okay. After the completion of session, if someone needs, I can show these both the questionnaires, RLS QOL and RLS RS. We do use both of the questionnaires in the people to diagnose and to maintain the documentation while treating the cases with RLS. Another questionnaire was RLS-RS, International Restless Leg Syndrome Rating Scale. It is again a subjective scale which measures the disease severity, and because of the restless leg syndrome in the past week only. So the difference is, in the RLS QOL we were measuring all the domains of life for last 1 month. Here we are measuring for 1 week only. So 10 questions are there, 2 subscales where we measure symptoms and symptoms impact. So we will score them 0 to 4. 0 is very severe and 4 is almost normal. Total score can be 40. So let us come to the management options. How obviously whenever there is a disease or disorder, it can be managed by 2 ways, either on a pharmacological way or on a non-pharmacological way. Being on a pharmacological way, there are a lot of things. If it is having any primary cause, any root cause like vitamin deficiency, any neurological complication, any CVD, anything else is there. So we need to find it out, rule it out, and treat it. We means the clinician, the physician, whatever who is dealing with the patient, and we need to find out the root cause. Can be the metabolic dysfunction. Dopamine agonists are usually given because whenever there is no cause found, all the investigations are normal. So it is suppose patient may have the anxiety. If it is found to have a stressful situation, patient may have anxiety. The dopamine agonists are usually given to improve the patient's mood, and that improves the symptoms of RLS. Benzodiazepine and gabapentin are commonly prescribed to improve the uneasiness which is being felt by the patient. Opioids are sometimes preferred in more severe cases. Now, so here in this, I would like to highlight one point is the dopamine agonist. So means when we are considering the hypothesis that dopamine deficiency can also create the symptoms like RLS or can develop the RLS syndrome. Means we, the physical therapist, can improve the dopamine in the human naturally. So we will discuss it in the physical therapy and how do we improve the dopamine in the patient. There can be 2 ways, either by the physical way or by the electrical way. So whenever talking about the non-pharmacological way, the physical therapy is the best approach to deal with, because either patient will have the physical symptoms, it will develop the psychological and the sleeping difficulties later in the life, and both can be well managed by the physical therapist only. And physical performance and quality of life all are the key domain of the physical therapist, which we improve for the patient. So I had given a study here. They had given few exercises. They had studied It was being done in 2018 only. So they studied the few set of exercises. Actually, there's no specific exercise, but there are a lot of exercises, a lot of self-stretching and all the things are being practiced and researched, and then they found to be effective, significantly effective in the people with RLS, even in the people with RLS or with pregnant women. They found to be very effective in these also. So there was a study being done in 2018. So they actually assessed the eligibility. The eligibility criteria was patient should not have any underlying medical or psychiatric condition. Patient should not have any adjacent trauma, and patient should meet the diagnostic criteria for criteria defined by RLS study group. Okay. So after screening the 55 participants, they excluded the 37 participants that does not meet the inclusion criteria. There are 2 participants who do not meet the criteria, and another declined to participate in the study. Finally, 18 participants remains, and they had been randomized in the 2 groups. One is the TRE group, another one is the focus group. Okay. So in the study, actually, they had done intervention, and they re-educated the patient that they do have a type of intervention. One is an immediate intervention, another one is a delayed intervention, and they already informed the patient about this. If they will get selected for the immediate intervention, then it's fine. They would be given specific set of protocol and specific exercises, and would be regularly followed up by their specialist or by the team members on the frequent interval as per the requirement of study. And if they are not being getting email or information for the immediate study, they can be allotted for the delayed study group. So there was a group, TRE group. So we'll see the TRE group, what they had done with the TRE group. And so equally 2 groups had been divided. So what they done in this studies, the patient or the participant asked to fill the questionnaire, both the primary and secondary questionnaire. Patient are asked to fill the RLS-QL and RLS-RS. So both, and along with this, PIRS is also asked to fill Pittsburgh Insomnia Severity Rating Scale, because most of the time people is having sleeping difficulty. So PIRS is used as a secondary outcome measure. Another group also, the patient is asked, participants are asked to fill the questionnaire, primary and secondary. So almost 6 participants fill this, and finally they get to analyze. So final analysis was done for all the 18 participants. Few left the study. Almost 2-3 participants left the study. 1 in the first week and 2 in the 5th week because of some their personal and familial issues. And has continued the study for the 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Sorry. So this was the TRE protocol. Exercise protocol. There is some set of exercises suggested, and what they had done in this TRE protocol is actually intervention consisted of 3 hours of introductory session and 1 hour of the session each week for the following 4 weeks, following 5 weeks, because total intervention was of 6 weeks only. So first week patient was taken for the 3-hour introductory session. Then program was designed to allow repeated reinforcement of the exercises and optimize the exercise mastery, so the participant could use the exercises in ongoing self-management. So in the first session, it was a lecture where the participants are taught to perform the self-stretching and strengthening exercises at the home, and they encouraged to do it, and regular follow-up was being taken. Participants were encouraged to use the floor-based exercises. Actually, what was the thing during this TRE protocol, trauma release exercise? In this, they actually provoke the RLS type symptoms. So they encourage the participant to work for 30 minutes plus 15 minutes. And during this, they provoke the tremors. And they have seen the response of the activity on the patient participant and their sleep performance. They instructed the patient, if the patient is having more severe tremor, if they are not they are reaching above the tolerability limit, then they can decline the intensity of workout, or they can work for the floor-based exercise or maintenance exercise for 15 minutes only. They are asked to reduce the intensity if the symptoms are so severe. If the symptoms are not so severe, they are tolerable enough, then they can be continued for 6 weeks as well. So what was the intervention in this trauma release exercise protocol was actually, there are two things. You can see one is a local exercise, another one was the floor-based exercise. The leading exercises or the main exercise protocol, it was consisted of 30-minute duration, and the floor exercises, which was actually a maintenance protocol, was a 15 minutes. In the main program, it was aimed to cause fatigue and stretch the muscle group, and in a specific sequence of involving the tremors or provoking the tremors. Rather, in the maintenance protocol, there was actually designed to stop the symptoms, aggravated symptoms caused by the main protocol. Both are performed in the standing position. For the main protocol, the patient was asked to do ankle pronation and supination, calf raises, quads exercises, isotonic quadriceps exercise, hamstring stretch, self, squat exercise, self, wall squats. All these has to be performed at least 1 time weekly. If the patient has the onset of tremor, then it was a time to stop the activity. Then again, it has to perform after a week. Now, in the isometric, in the maintenance group, the patient was asked to ease the symptoms if it was aggravated because of that main group, main intervention. So there was an isometric hip abductor exercises was being performed, butterfly stretching was being performed. As a fatigue or tremor begins, knees are sequentially moved closer together for 2 minutes or to ease the symptoms, and legs kept the parallel with feet on each other. And this was a TRE protocol, actually trauma release protocol, which they used during the study. And after the 6-week protocol, they found there was a significant relief, significant ease in the symptoms of the individuals in the pre and post outcome measures. Though it can be stated that these are the novel exercises which, or these can be prescribed as a physical therapy protocol exercises for the treatment of RLS syndrome. Before proceeding with this, my own case report, I would like to add on something in this physical therapy protocol. There are a lot of articles, a lot of researches are available. To support my work. There is a dopamine deficiency to be hypothesized as a cause of RLS. The use of cranial electrotherapy stimulation via auricular branch of the vagus nerve stimulates the reticular activating system, and there are a lot of fMRI studies which suggest it can improve the release of natural dopamine inside the brainstem. So it can be claimed, it can be considered as a viable option, as an adjunct to the treatment for the patient with the RLS. Along with this, there are a lot of psychotherapeutic approaches and basic sleep hygiene education to be considered as an option of treatment during the physical therapy. And very interestingly, American Diabetic Association in their clinical practice guideline in 2017 had emphasized the use of taking sleep history while assessing the diabetic population to rule out the RLS type syndrome. And APTA in their 2018 18 CPG guideline, I guess, they also mentioned or emphasized to consider the sleep health or to take the assessment of the sleep health of an individual. Hope I'm connected. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. So APTA also emphasized that sleep health assessment to be considered during the physical therapy examination of an individual, either it to be a chronic neurological patient or anything else. So whenever assessing a patient, we should ask about the sleeping history of an individual. We should have a detailed sleep assessment for an individual. Many times it doesn't need any investigation, it doesn't need any tools, it just needs your questionnaire. And while finding any difficulty with the sleeping issues, you need to find out the root cause, and sleep hygiene should be considered as a first line management of non-pharmacotherapeutic approach, and it has a significant results in improving the sleep of the individual. So I would like to emphasize the use of sleep hygiene, cranial electrotherapy stimulation, motivational interviewing, and re-education and reassurance with a physical therapy intervention during the treatment to be considered to treat the patient. Now, there is my experience with a unique case of RLS. Why it was a unique case? It was just 6 months ago. I guess in the March only, the patient came to me. So there was a very interesting case. Let me make it visible to you all. You can read it. So there was a very interesting case. Male, around 30 or 31-year-old male, just married. And after the marriage, I think 1 or 2 months, suddenly patient developed the toe tremor in the legs. And this actually I had even shared on my Facebook page also. So patient had developed the toe tremor. So because of this toe tremor, this was visible enough. And after a month, tremor frequency increased, and it was so distressing, the patient was not even able to sleep on the night because of this tremor. When the tremor started, the frequency and intensity was lower, but gradually it increases with the time. So when it increases with time, and especially it was happening on the night time only, the patient rushes to the diagnosis to the neurologist, and then neurologist refer the patient for the few blood investigation and scans of the brain. While scanning, MRI brain was found to be absolutely normal. All the scans were found to be very, very normal because the patient's presentation was very similar to the RLS type of symptoms. So they considered as a differential diagnosis can be like RLS if there is no underlying cause. So there was no underlying cause in the MRI brain was found. So it was being considered as a RLS type syndrome. And although patient found to be normal, there was no iron deficiency, there was no vitamin B12 deficiency, there was no hemoglobin deficiency as well. Still, considering the hypothesis of iron deficiency in brain in RLS, they started with the injectable vitamin B12, a loading dose of it, and oral vitamin B12 with a loading dose of it, along with the gabapentin as a neuroprotective agent to ease the symptoms, and 2 other medications. Patient has received the pharmacological treatment for around 2 months. So after 2 months, patient reached to the treatment, and then patient received the treatment for 2 more months. And after this 1 more month, around 5 or 6 months later, patient from somewhere reached to me. And when I have seen the patient and examined the patient in a detailed way, obviously the patient was already screened out by a neurologist. There was no focal neurological disease, no neurological deficiency was being found in the patient in the examination. Same findings was there after even 3 months of the examination of neurologist. The patient has no neurological deficit. All the sensory, all the motor, all the reflex testing was found to be very normal. All the mental ability and performance was normal, but the crucial thing which was abnormal patient performance was the sleeping habits, aggravation of symptoms in the night time, and very importantly, as we had studied in the RLS diagnostic criteria, there was no underlying cause to be found. So it can be considered and it was been diagnosed as a case of RLS. And according to the criteria, as the patient met all the 4 criteria of the RLS study group, and we undertake the RLS QI of the patient, started the physical therapy. There are few physical findings. Being a physical therapist, I noticed that as a patient was actually owner of factory, and this was, I guess, just after the time of lockdown. So there was a lot of workload as there was the restarting of the working, and patient has a lot of workload and was working for 12 to 14 hours. Maybe some stress is there, and patient was sitting or standing for a longer duration. So that I was considering, but this was happening when patient visiting to me in the March. So patient, it happens to the February, but patient has symptoms from the July, means just after the pandemic, when the situation was not so like the patient was not having so much workload and all, and although he was just married, so maybe enjoying holidays and so relaxed, not so stressful. So the physical findings reveals the tight muscles of the lower extremities, along with some muscle weakness. The muscle weakness means just 4/5 only. So when examining, the muscle weakness was found. So started with physical therapy, stretching and strengthening of the required muscle, along with the transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation or cranial electrical stimulation for 25 minutes, 6 days in a week. And as a first line of management, started with sleep hygiene education and re-education and reassurance. And very interestingly, after 2 weeks, when we re-examined the frequency of the tremors, because it was a prominent complaint of the patient, it was a prominent goal of the patient, which the patient want to improve, that I should not have, I'm not worried about my sleeping problem, I am worried about my tremors, because now these are going to be prominent enough. They are visible. So this was a common complaint, the most common goal of the patient. So we considered it as a primary goal of the treatment. So initially, when we have seen in a 1 minute around 10 to 13 repetitions was there of the tremors, for the throat tremors. After 2 weeks, it was reduced to only 2 to 3 repetitions in a minute. So around 300% reduction was being noticed after the 2 weeks protocol. There was a physical therapy protocol, sleep hygiene, along with a cranial electrotherapy stimulation. Remarkable relief achieved. Patient during the physical therapy treatment, patient was not receiving any pharmacological agent, because already patient has completed the taper down dose of steroid. Patient has completed the loading dose of vitamin B12 and oral dose of B12 as well. So all the medicine was already being withdrawn by the patient itself during the physical therapy. Patient was completely on the physical therapy protocol, and after the 4 week, patient was completely get rid of the symptoms. There was no tremor. Even after the 6 months of the follow-up, when we asked the patient on the telephonic interview, the patient is completely free of the symptoms, working well, having no difficulty in sleeping. During the time of onset, the patient was having difficulty in sleeping. The patient was not even able to sleep for even 2 and 3. Sleep onset was 2 to 3 hours. After that also, the patient just wake up in 1 hour and 2 hours, and then unable to sleep again. After the treatment, patient was sleeping within 30 to 40 minutes. As well, there was no sleep disruption. There was no tremor. See, or we cannot. We can consider this as a multi-trial and don't. And now I'm open for queries. And if anyone wants to read the questionnaire, so I can show it up if needed. If anybody has queries, write down this.
If someone have doubts, you can text it in chat box, or you can just ask, unmute yourself.
Shall I stop the screen sharing if it is not needed now?
Yes, sure. So there was one question from my side.
Yeah, ma'am, please.
Sir, RLS and DVT have similar symptoms somehow. So, how, being a physiotherapist, when a patient comes to you, how do you differentiate between both of them?
Nice, great question, ma'am. Actually, as I already mentioned, hope I am audible now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So as I already mentioned in the risk factors, CVD, any type of cerebrovascular disorder can provoke or can cause the symptoms of RLS. So it can mimic the symptoms like RLS, but underlying cause will be different. And in RLS, there would be no varicosity, there would be no venous insufficiency, there would be no lymphedema as well, or there is no swelling, pedal edema in the extremities. Rather in the DVT, whenever we examine, all these things will be present. So this can give us an idea that this RLS is not an idiopathic RLS. It is actually a secondary RLS. It can be RLS, but it is a secondary RLS. Another very important thing, if we suspect any of these CVD, so it may be accompanied with any other abnormality also. The patient may have any physical performance difficulties. The patient's age the patient may have an advanced age and so. So by taking a detailed history, we can get out to know that it is a idiopathic RLS or it is a secondary RLS. So the symptoms, and in DVT also, the patient will never relieve the symptom after the activity.
Thank you, sir. There's one more question that
Yes.
how can diabetes cause tremors?
Actually, in the diabetes, as you all know, diabetes mellitus affects. It is a multi-system disease. It is not even affecting only your metabolic system. It affects your CNS as well as PNS. So whenever it is affecting your CNS, so if it is affecting the CNS, it can provoke the generation of other CNS disorders. So definitely it can cause tremor because it is affecting your metabolism, your iron efficiency, and your dopamine. So whenever there is a dopamine dysregulation in the brain, it leads to the generation of the tremor.
So, can these tremors be confused with Parkinsonism? Because I have this one patient who is suffering from diabetes. At the same time, he has been diagnosed with Parkinsonism. And after watching your lecture, I am confused that he's having balance difficulties. He's having pain in his legs. He's having sleeping disorder. So, moreover, he has been diagnosed with Parkinson too. So I'm thinking that if those tremors are because of Parkinson's, or it is because of diabetes. Please.
See, there actually all things are related. One thing actually we can see. First of all, we need to identify which was the primary cause, means which initiated it first. Was the diabetes? It comes into the history. Was the diabetes initiated first? Was Parkinson initiated first? The symptoms. And the cause of Parkinsonism. So, if Parkinsonism, it can cause RLS. But for having RLS, patient must have work of the symptoms in evening time or in the rest. Rather than pure Parkinsonism, RLS, patient symptom with the rest. So, if the having aggravation of symptom with the rest, it can be RLS and definitely secondary RLS. Maybe because of the Parkinson or maybe because of diabetes.
Okay, sir. There's one more question from Tulsi. She said, good lecture, great awareness on RLS. My question is, if a pregnant woman without diabetes experiencing the RLS, can we use the same treatment protocol?
Yeah, see, if it coming to the physical therapy intervention, yeah, but we should consider the trimester of pregnancy because there are some restriction in the third trimester. So considering the patient's capabilities, patient functional performances, we can use the treatment protocol. And most commonly, it is there are a lot of evidences available where we usually suggest the patient relaxation exercises, deep diaphragmatic breathing exercises, re-education, self-stretching of calf and hands. Or can be sometimes uncomfortable or may not be so easy for the patient to perform. If patient can perform, then it can be done. In the one thing that is pregnancy.
So your voice is breaking.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
In pregnancy, there is no
Hello.
need to develop RLS because of diabetes. Hello. Yeah.
Sir, can you repeat the answer because your voice is breaking?
Oh, okay, ma'am. Yeah. Please let me know if I am audible or not. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, okay, I'm repeating the answer. Whenever the pregnant woman is having symptoms like RLS, so there is no need to develop diabetes during pregnancy to develop RLS because pregnancy itself is a greater risk factor to develop it. During pregnancy, the most of the women develop iron deficiency, and this iron deficiency anemia is sufficient enough to cause RLS, and that's why it is most commonly diagnosed in the first trimester of pregnancy. And very interestingly, government is raising awareness and working greatly for it during the trimester of pregnancy because usually via a proper channel via like Anganwadi and Asha, they are providing iron tablets, calcium tablets regularly to the individual, to the pregnant woman. So this iron deficiency is many of the times recovered, and it also improves RLS. Still, after taking iron and calcium tablets, patient is having symptoms. We can suggest them self-stretching, strengthening, and relaxation exercises. And very interestingly, we had done a study in the last year. There was one of my students of the final year which had done this study. We had done actually an experimental study. We screened out a few pregnant women, and we selected women had taught the stretching and strengthening the relaxation for a specific set of protocol, and they had been reassessed, and regular follow-up was being taken after a week. And after 4 weeks, we had seen most of them were improved, and there was statistical significant result in the improvement of the symptoms. So this we can claim this study actually is not published till now. It was been just published in his project report, in the final project report. So by this also we can conclude, yeah. And this study was been done in the Kota city only, and a specific area, DCM area of the Kota city. A few women participated, and all of them were receiving the iron tablets and calcium tablets. Still they are having the RLS symptoms, and we had given them physical therapy, and they had improved that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
There's one more question from Nija Nair. She asks, can diabetes cause paralysis, and if yes, then how?
Yeah, definitely. It is well known. Diabetes always causes the paralysis because whenever the patient is having hyperglycemia, it is a multi-system disease. If patient is having CVD, it can develop diabetes. If patient is having diabetes, it makes you more prone to develop CVD because having more sugar, more hyperglycemia, patient is having insulin resistance. This insulin resistance may lead to the sleep deprivation, CNS deficiency. If this hyperglycemia leading to the CNS damage, it can lead to the CV. It happens. Most of the stroke patients having the history of either hypertension or diabetes.
Okay,
because
sir.
hyperglycemia is directly to the hyperlipidemia as well.
Okay. Any more questions? Any more questions from your side? Please text. Okay, sir. I think there are no more questions. So that's all with RLS and diabetes type 2 and its treatment. Thank you, sir, for coming here. And okay, there's one more question from
Yeah, I
Tulsi.
can. Tulsi. Yeah.
Yeah. Any use in any use of crepe bandage for a pregnant lady in RLS?
Yeah, crab bandage actually compression stockings can be used not directly for RLS, can be used if the patient because most of the time if there is any complication of pregnancy like patient is having preeclampsia, so in that patient usually have the edematous extremities. For that compression stockings for crab bandages can be used. But if the iron deficiency underlying cause has to be considered, and physical therapy intervention along with this compression stocking, patient has to be suggested with physical intervention, re-education, sleep hygiene.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking your precious time and delivering all the knowledge to everyone present over here. We hope that we will connect with you again in the future. Thank you, Dr. Shalini ma'am, for taking your precious time to come and attend this meeting with us, and also welcoming our guest lecturer. And I hope that this will be a huge success in future, and people will also start doing new researches in the field of diabetes. It's a very ignored field right now. So I think that all the people present over here will try something new, will innovate something new, and make a difference.
Ruchika ma'am, kindly brief about the next session we are having. Can you
Um,
kindly brief about that to
yes,
the students?
the next session on physiotherapy in diabetes will take place on 14th of November. 7th of November, Sunday, is off because of Diwali vacations, and 14th of November will be a session on diabetes by Dr. Darshika Vyas, and all the information will be delivered to you through emails and text messages. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Everyone can leave now. Thank you.